And now here's Chuck with another interview for Voices of Experience.
Do you want to book more business? Now, if you said no, please turn off VOE because this segment is not for you. For those who screamed yes, then listen and, well, personal suggestion, watch Lois Creamer, who shares so much value. This is a segment you might want to play over and over so you get the full impact of the golden nuggets that Lois shares.
In the National Speakers Association, there are a number of people who are recognized as experts in their field. Lois Creamer is one of those with her website, Book More Business. And I know from conversations you and I have had before that you really specialize in helping people understand how to get more business.
That's right. It's a very niche business. This is all I do, working with just professional speakers who want to monetize their intellectual property.
Okay, so Lois, number one, it's a niche business. That reminds me of the funeral world, I'm saying. Can't help it. There's just something about that word that really is enlightening or inspiring or hot. In any event, it is a unique business to be in, and I know you have great success because I've talked to people that have worked with you. So here's my question for you. As a speaker, I've just delivered a kicking keynote. I mean, people are coming up to me, they're telling me a great job, they're being vulnerable with me, whatever it happens to be, and I need to figure out how I'm going to get more from this event. What are the things you're going to advise me to do?
I'm glad you asked me about this part of the business because I think it's part of the business that we don't talk about enough. And I've been sharing a message this year with the chapters that I've visited about something that I call aftercare. What do you do after the speech?
Right.
And I think that we establish great relationships with a speech. You go in, you give a speech, they love you, they think you're the smartest thing in the world. And then you go on to your next speech, or. When I started in 1998, I did some sales programs, corporate sales programs. And one of the things I always did, Chuck, was after I did the program, I went back to my office and I called the person who hired me. And I said, I loved being with your group today. They seem pumped up. They like my ideas. Say, do you think it would make sense, which is one of my phrases that pays, do you think it would make sense for us to make sure your sales managers can actually implement the ideas, tactics, and suggestions that I had today? Because if you do, we could work out an arrangement where I could spend some time with those sales managers to implement this information.
Okay.
Now, when you say, do you think it would make sense? It's a hard thing to say, no, we spend thousands to bring you in, but we don't want to actually implement this information.
Right.
And I want it to be a hard no. And I'll tell you what happened with me. Many times I made more on the back end than I did for the speech in front of the group. And for people who do consulting, coaching, small group work, I want you to think about how can you further monetize this relationship that you've established with someone after you've given a speech. And it's not going out and creating a new area of expertise. It's repurposing your material. It's making sure that you can give people the answers to their questions, give them new tactics. And for me, it was listening to the feedback they had on the ideas that I gave them. This was very interesting. I did it back then in Google Groups. We don't have Google Groups now, but we've got Zoom. You can record them. And I always say, let's gather together. You do this virtually. You don't have to get on a plane to do this, which is one of the advantages, I think, for people. Also, aftercare can be webinar. Maybe you can do 3 follow-up webinars to implement certain things that you mentioned in your speech. Maybe it can be writing articles. In the next 6 months, you're going to put articles in front of these people who were in your audience. But it's all about thinking, how can I further this relationship and add some accountability to the information that I gave them? How can I help them actually implement these new ideas, tactics, and strategies that we talked about in the speech and be more successful with them?
Okay, now Lois, I want to go kind of deep with that, okay?
Yeah.
And if I'm overstepping bounds, yeah, you'll tell me, okay? But you said, well, but I'm talking to a group of salespeople, and you ask the question, the phrase that pays, that's hard to say no to. But if you're speaking to a group of people as an entertaining keynoter, the question becomes, what is there to implement? I provided an incredible experience. They enjoyed themselves. I really would like them to remember 2 or 3 things, perhaps. But what next?
I want to caution people on the labels that they use for programs.
Okay.
You know, there's great misunderstanding, even in our meetings industry, on how we define a keynote, a breakout, a workshop. And what is ruling even the keynote stage now is content.
Okay.
High content rules this industry now. I tell people who come up to me and may say, Lois, I'd love to be a motivational speaker. And I said, no, you don't. That ship has sailed. What really packs people in and gets the interest is leading with content. Follow with your style of speaking. So I might say, I'm a high content speaker who's motivational in style.
Oh,
okay.
That's an interesting phrase.
Well, I'll tell you, some of the speakers bureaus have hired me to work with their agents on selling you all.
Okay.
And I asked one of the owners years ago, could I talk with one of your corporate people who books a lot of speeches? Tell him I'd just like 15 minutes of his time. And I did. And the first thing he said to me was, tell Joe, not his real name, tell Joe to quit sending me motivational speakers. And I said, why do you say that? And he said, because for corporate, we liken motivational speaking to cotton candy. Chuck, he said, it looks like it has a lot of content, but it dissipates too quickly.
Ooh.
And I thought that was an interesting metaphor and an interesting way to describe it. And all I know is ever since the economy slowed down in the mid-2000s, high content takeaways people want, even unless it's pure entertainment keynote.
Right.
People still want that content in a keynote. So make sure that you are defining these things correctly when you go in. For people who do more of a high content, more of an entertainment keynote, I think going back and implementation might not work. However, this doesn't preclude you from selling products that may help people down the road. You should be selling books, tapes, digital recordings,
sure,
things like that. This is all part of aftercare.
Right.
I would say, maybe except for books, I am real big on pre-selling books and using my phrase that pays again by saying this. Do you think it would make sense, now that I'm coming in to do this program, for everybody in the audience to be able to walk away with a reminder of my visit and even more information than I'm able to give you today? Because if you do, we can make that happen and put my book in the hands of every attendee.
Okay, so here on VOE, you might want to stop the recording or the podcast at this point, rewind slightly. I would say the tape, but that ages me because there is no tape. But to go backwards a second and listen to exactly that phrase, because that phrase is priceless.
Well, it works. I can tell you, my clients will tell you that it works. And so I want you to consider, for those of you who are selling books, whatever kind of products you have, pre-selling and making selling in the back of the room your fallback. Let's sell cartons and crates of books and not a book at a time. That's not the business you need to be in, selling a book at a time. You can do that on Amazon, on your own website. But I think pre-selling, it also can allow people to realize the full depth of your information. It also is, a walking business card in a way. It gives people reason to bring you back to cover more than you obviously were able to. So I think aftercare can have different definitions, Chuck, depending upon how you would categorize yourself as a speaker.
So let's assume for a moment that you have quality content that can be delivered in a motivational way. And you know that you're going into a department of a company. A corporation's got 25,000 employees, but you're going into a department to deliver to 300 people.
Yes.
Okay?
Yep.
So you just delivered to 300 people, and those are influencers, but there's a lot of people left behind.
Yes.
And you're thinking, wow, wouldn't that message be great if everyone could get that?
Yes.
How would you, from an aftercare perspective, pitch how we deliver that to those 26,700 people that are left?
You know, that's a great question. I had this come up when I was doing my sales programs. I worked for a large company in St. Louis who had its headquarters in St. Louis, and I worked for one of the divisions. And there were other divisions who had salespeople in them.
Sure.
And I knew my message would be meaningful for them. So my strategy, if you will, was to first do a great job for the division that hired me in the first place.
Of course.
And then afterwards to go back to the person who paid me, who decided to secure the date for me, and go back and say, I know you have different divisions. You can find out, you can do a lot of marketing intelligence just on the website, how many other divisions.
Sure.
What other, your other divisions, could they use a message like this too? And would you mind writing me a testimonial and letting me use your name and putting it in their mailbox, suggesting that you suggested that I get a hold of them, that this message might be meaningful? And can I allow you to be one of my advocates? If you would do that, I would so appreciate it. I did this and worked in 4 out of the 5 divisions of this large company. It was with a phone call, and the person who hired me could not have been more nicer. Wrote me a testimonial, introduced me by email to the other division heads, said, if you want a personal testimonial, call me, which was really very generous. And I did. I got business that way. But, I did a little webinar with Fripp. And she said, I want to ask you, she calls me Lois Business Creamer.
You do that so well.
Actually, better than she does herself, which is a whole interesting dynamic. She said, what's the biggest mistake you think professional speakers make? And I said, it's easy, one word, leverage. They don't leverage the success that they've just had. And so to me, the key to leveraging is, of course, aftercare, like we just discussed. It's looking at other divisions within a corporation, which we just discussed. But it's also looking at, okay, I just spoke for Bank of America, say. Who would be happy knowing that I worked for Bank of America and that experience would carry some weight? Other banks, payroll companies, accounting services, only 50,000 associations in the banking industry would be interested in that. So it's looking at leveraging your success into the next success. Too many people, especially earlier in their careers, go out, hit a home run, feel great, go back to their office and go, wow, I can't wait to do that again. I wonder where I can do it. Without thinking, how can I take this home run I just made and leveraging it? Who will be happy to hear about this? And this is what I did when I was selling my sales programs. I looked at all of the associations connected with it. And also, I think that we've become lax about asking for referrals. And by just simply asking the person who hired you, now that you know what I do, is there anybody else you think who could use a message like this that I could contact? This is so easy to do, but I think that we don't do it. We aren't deliberate enough.
Why? What do you think is the driving factor that would keep someone from asking such a simple question with such profound potential from ever raising the question to begin with?
I'll tell you why I think it is. I think it's that people, I always hear, Chuck, and I will hear it this weekend at our convention, I hate to sell myself. And I always say, well, then you might want to think about another line of work. Because if you don't sell yourself, who the hell is going to do it? Excuse me.
That's fine.
And even if you hire someone and train them to do it, having staff can be a revolving door. The only constant is you. You're the only one who doesn't leave. And you need to be able to sell your intellectual property better than anybody. And so I think that people are reticent to ask for the business. And I think that you've got to think more about your programs as more of a commodity, maybe. I was telling this to someone on the plane today. I never took rejection personally when somebody said, or still do, if somebody says, I'm going to work with so-and-so instead of you. I always put everything to fit. I'm not the right fit. I look at what I do, the information, my intellectual property, is more of a commodity. This is the commodity I'm selling, I'm putting out in the marketplace. If this commodity is a good fit for you, I hope you'll think about working with me. If it isn't, you'll have to work with somebody else who's a better fit. But I think that people are reticent to talk about themselves. And I think that some people are not comfortable saying, you know what, I just was really honored to present at Bank of America. And they were thrilled with the program. In fact, a couple of them said it was one of the best programs. Use a third person testimonial.
Sure.
But you have to toot your own horn in this business if you're serious about it.
You gotta toot your own horn. Now I'm saying amen to that, sister.